This is looking at task 2, which is viewing a personal tutor group, which involves displaying the details of the tutor logged in, generating and displaying the total number of students in their group, and displaying the student details along with an overview of the issues raised for all students in the group. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a form. We're going to call it form tutor group and base it upon table tutor. So I'm just going to go to create and we're going to go form wizard, and I want it to be based upon TBL tutor. So I want to have the tutor ID, tutor first name, tutor last name. It might be there's a tutor group in the solution, that's quite possible. We'll obviously go with this for now. And then I'm just going to click on next. And I'm going to keep on the columnar layout. This is just using the form wizard to make this. I'm going to change the name of the form to tutor group details. That's just actually, sorry, not the name of the form, the title on the form. And then I'm going to click finish. And I'm just going to Control S to save the form, and I'm going to save it as, actually I'm just going to rename the form. Rename FRM tutor group, FRM tutor group. So I'm just going to go back to design view for that form, and then I'm going to, the next thing I need to do is I need to create a list box. Actually, there's one other thing I need to do first, is I need to change the onload property of the form. So you need to go to the form properties. You can always get to them by clicking anywhere and just right click form properties, and if I go to the data, I want to say filter on load is yes, and the filter is going to be actually this tutor ID field. So tutor ID, we always do the square brackets if we're referring to a field. Tutor ID equals, it's actually going to equal the tutor ID that's been entered onto the login form. So it's actually a really good idea for your login form to make a note of the form login and the name of that field, because you will be using it a lot. If you remember from task 1, we actually, when we made the query teacher login, we used it in there. So I'm just going to go and nick it from there to save me save me writing out again. But this is the thing, you need to write that down somewhere prominent, because you will use it, as I say, a few times throughout this. So I'm going to say filter on load tutor ID equals, because we want the tutor to be the tutor that's logged in, and this basically will be the form that opens. We'll change the macro in task 1. Instead of saying it's a tutor, it will actually open this form. So that's the first thing to do. So we've got our tutor, that will just mean that when it opens, it will be on the tutor ID from the login. Okay, so that's all good. Now we need to create a list box. Now don't confuse this with a combo box, they are different. We need to create a list box. Now the first thing, I'm going to have a list box which is going to be all of the students that belong to that tutor, because each tutor is assigned to a number of students. So the first thing I want to do is create a query to base my list box upon. So I'm going to say create query design, and I'm going to be querying table students and table issues. And I want to see, because I actually want, in the task it tells me I want an overview of the issues raised for all students in the group. So I'm going to go student ID, and then I'm going to say first name and last name. This is guesswork. I'm guessing that we just have the number of issues each student has. That's obviously purely my guess. It could be incorrect, but it will be a similar process whatever happens. And then we want to have in the students, we will also want to have their tutor ID, and their tutor ID once again is exactly the same for the criteria, the actual login details. So I should have that hopefully in the clipboard. I have, so I've just pasted that in there. You could use build to, it's the same, the tutor ID from the login form. So that's my criteria. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add some totals to this query. So automatically goes to group by. I want them all to be grouped by, apart from the issue ID, and I want that to be count. So what I'm going to do now, that's my query. I'm going to save this as query for list box. Again, just an obvious name, so you'll remember what the queries will relate to later. And I'm just going to shut that down. And then I'm going to make my list box. So go to design. I'm in my form tutor group. Go to design. go to the list box, just make sure it's a list box, not a combo box, click on here, and then I want it to get the values from another table or query, next, and it's going to be queries, I want it to be query for list box, next, all of the fields, next, and I'm not going to worry about sorting. I might ask you to sort, you never know, and then next, carry on just next, and then next again, and finish. I'm going to go to form view and just have a look at this. So if I go to form view, and it's actually looking for the form login, so I'm going to go to my login form, just going to cancel that. I'm going to go to my login form, and I'm going to put in a tutor details. So let's just go to open 1000 1 2 3 4. So 1000 password 1 2 3 4, and so form tutor group. Let's just open the form in form view. And you can see it's brought up the details of Brad Brown, and it's brought up all of the people in his tutor group. So that's all working correctly. The next thing that I want to do is I want to have a field. It says it wants to display the number of students in that tutor group. That's what the scenario says. So I'm just going to move down the list box, and I'm going to add another field in here, just a blank field, and I'm going to call that number, and it will not call it, sorry, number of students. I'll actually just move this along. If that happens, it's quite difficult sometimes to separate the two. So one way you can do that is if you just go to arrange, and you make it stacked, and it will just make them go like that. So that can be quite annoying. I'll go to here, and number of students. So anyway, the number of students in this field, what I'm going to do in the text box is I'm going to have use dcount again. Dcount we came across earlier, so it counts the number of records returned by a query. So dcount, for this one we're actually, instead of having an asterisk, we're going to count the number of times that student ID occurs in the query, and then the name of the query is query for list box. Remember, if you get the query name slightly wrong or the field name, it won't run, so you have to really check that if there are any error messages. So if I just go back to form view, and you can see number of students 6, there's actually 6 students. 1 2 3 4 5 6, yeah, 6 students, that's all correct. So the final thing to do there is just to go to our layout view, and we're going to just make it look a bit pretty so that everything fits on the screen. And then we're going to move on to task 3, which follows on from here. Task 3 will actually click on a student, and it will take us to view more of their issues.